3 months after the battle at the Proving Grounds, Earth received a message from the Galactic Council. It was not the membership approval they expected. It was a warning. Admiral Subin read the decoded transmission in her office at Fleet Command, deep under the surface of Luna. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached the end. She read it again, hoping she had misunderstood. She had not. "Get me Captain Dae-sung," she said to her aide, "and wake up the president. We have a situation." 12 hours later, every ranking military officer in the Sol system sat around a conference table. Dae-sung was there, still recovering from injuries sustained during the battle. Ambassador Hai-jin attended via hologram from Nexus Prime Station, where she had been desperately trying to prevent what was now inevitable. "The Kryn Empire has declared Earth a threat to galactic stability," Hai-jin said, her holographic form flickering slightly from the distance. "They've convinced enough council members that we need to be pacified. 20 warships are being assembled. Fexthor himself will lead them." 20? Someone whispered. "We only have 12 ships total." Admiral Subin stood at the head of the table, her expression grim. "Worse than that. Only 8 of our vessels are combat capable. The other 4 are transports we've been trying to retrofit. They won't be ready in time." "How long do we have?" asked Dae-sung. "The Kryn fleet will arrive in Sol system in 6 days, Subin said. "They're calling it a protective peacekeeping action. Their official statement says they're coming to establish a Kryn protectorate over Earth and its colonies for our own safety." "That's slavery with better public relations," Dae-sung said flatly. "Yes," Subin agreed. "And if we resist, they've been authorized to use overwhelming force. The Council has washed their hands of us. As far as the galaxy is concerned, we humiliated the Kryn and now we're paying the price." Silence fell over the room. Everyone there understood what 20 Kryn warships could do to Earth's small fleet. It would not be a battle. It would be an execution. "What about evacuations?" someone asked. "Can we get civilians off-world?" "Where would they go?" Hai-jin's hologram gestured helplessly. "Every council member has closed their borders to human refugees. They're too afraid of Kryn retaliation. We're alone in this." Dae-sung looked at the star map displayed on the wall. Earth and its 3 colony worlds glowed blue. 12 red dots represented the human fleet, scattered across the system. 20 purple markers showed the projected path of the incoming Kryn fleet. "We can't win a straight fight," he said slowly, "but we don't have to." Admiral Subin turned to look at him. "Explain." "The Bloodfang retreated because we confused them. Their tactics are based on perfection, on following doctrine, on coordinated fleet movements. They've been using the same strategies for thousands of years because those strategies always worked. But what if we refuse to fight that way?" "You're talking about guerrilla warfare," Subin said. "Hit-and-run tactics. Asymmetric combat, exactly. We can't match their firepower, but we can make them chase us. We can make them split their forces. We can attack from unexpected angles and retreat before they can respond. We turn the entire Sol system into a battlefield where their advantages don't matter." An older captain shook his head. "That might delay them, but it won't stop them. Eventually they'll just blockade Earth and starve us out. Unless we break their will to fight," Dae-sung said. "The Kryn came here expecting an easy victory. Every day we survive, every ship we damage, every loss they take, it costs them more. In resources, in prestige. Eventually the cost becomes too high." "You're gambling with billions of lives," someone said. "We're already gambling," Dae-sung replied. "If we surrender, we lose everything that makes us human. If we run, they'll hunt us down. Fighting is the only option that gives us a chance." Admiral Subin studied the star map for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Captain Dae-sung, I'm putting you in charge of tactical planning. You have 6 days to prepare the fleet. We'll fight your way." The next 6 days were chaos. Every ship in the fleet was stripped down and rebuilt for speed and stealth. Heavy armor was removed to make room for extra fuel and ammunition. Mining charges from the asteroid belt were converted into improvised bombs. Civilian vessels were loaded with supplies and hidden in the Kuiper belt, ready to resupply the fleet during the fighting. Jiwoo, promoted to commander and given her own ship, worked with the other tactical officers to plan ambush points throughout the system. They identified places where asteroids, radiation, and other natural phenomena could hide ships from sensors. They plotted escape routes and rally points. They prepared for a battle that could last weeks. Engineer Tae-hyun led teams across the fleet, teaching other engineers every dirty trick he knew. how to coax more power from failing reactors, how to repair critical systems with spare parts from unrelated equipment, how to make one missile do the work of 3 through clever timing and placement. Medical Officer Bo-Ra prepared for mass casualties. Every ship now had expanded medical facilities. Trauma teams drilled endlessly. She also worked with civilian volunteers, training them as battlefield medics. If ships were boarded, every person aboard needed to know how to save lives. On the 6th day, the Kryn fleet arrived. 20 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. They were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Each ship was more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. Together, they represented enough firepower to reduce Earth to ash. Vexthor's face appeared on every broadcast screen in the system. His message was simple and brutal. Humans of Earth, 3 months ago you were fortunate. You faced a single ship, and through trickery and desperation you survived. But fortune does not last forever. I have returned with 20 vessels of the Kryn Imperial Fleet. You cannot win. You cannot escape. Surrender now and you will be allowed to live under Kryn protection. Resist and you will be destroyed. You have 12 hours to decide. Admiral Subin did not wait 12 hours. She broadcast her response immediately. Lord Commander Vexthor, you came to our home because we hurt your pride. That was a mistake. We fought one of your ships when we had nothing to lose. Now we're fighting 20 of your ships to protect everything we love. That's not desperation. That's determination. You want Earth? Come and take it, the transmission ended. On ships across the fleet, crews stood at their stations and waited. Vexthor did not make them wait long. The Kryn fleet advanced in perfect formation, moving toward Earth at a steady, calculated pace. They were not rushing. They did not need to. They had time, overwhelming force, and centuries of military tradition on their side. Admiral Subin watched the enemy approach from the command center on Luna. Beside her, Daesung studied the tactical displays. The Kryn were doing exactly what he expected, moving as a unified fleet, following doctrine, presenting an unstoppable wall of force. All ships, Subin transmitted, execute plan chaos. The human fleet scattered. 8 warships that had been grouped together suddenly broke formation and fled in 8 different directions. They used every trick to mask their movements. One ship hid in the radiation shadow of Jupiter. Another disappeared into the asteroid belt. A third headed toward the sun at maximum speed, using the star's energy output to blind sensors. The Kryn fleet slowed, uncertain. They had expected resistance, but not this. The enemy had simply vanished. Pursue, Vexthor ordered. All ships maintain communication. We hunt them down one by one. But the Sol system was vast, and the humans had spent 6 days preparing. The Kryn split their fleet into 4 groups of 5 ships each, searching different regions of the system. That was the moment Admiral Subin had been waiting for. Now, she said quietly. The human ships emerged from hiding and attacked, not in formation, not in coordinated strikes. Each captain chose their own targets, their own tactics, their own timing. Jiwoo led her small corvette in a suicide run against a Kryn cruiser, firing every weapon before vanishing into the asteroid belt. Another ship lured 2 Kryn vessels into Jupiter's gravity well, forcing them to break off or risk being pulled out of position. The Kryn responded with discipline and firepower. They destroyed 1 human ship in the first hour, then another, but the remaining ships would not stop. Would not surrender, would not fight fair. They're like insects, Vexthor roared at his tactical officer. They sting and retreat. Where is their command structure? Where is their formation? They don't have one, Lord Commander, the officer replied, studying the chaotic battle data. Each ship is acting independently. There's no pattern, no coordination, just chaos. Vexthor stared at the tactical display and felt a cold realization settle over him. The humans were not trying to win a battle. They were trying to make the battle last forever, and they were succeeding. On Luna, Admiral Subin watched the tactical map and allowed herself a small, grim smile. They had lost 2 ships, but the Kryn had been forced to split their fleet, abandon their formation, and chase phantoms across the solar system. Day 1 is ours, she said. Let's see how they feel about Day 2. In orbit around Mars, Daesung listened to the reports from across the fleet and felt something he had not expected. Hope. The battle for the Sol system entered its 4th day. The Kryn had expected to conquer Earth in hours. Instead, they found themselves bleeding. Commander Jiwoo watched her tactical display from the cramped bridge of the corvette Defiant. Her small ship had been designed for reconnaissance, not combat, but necessity had transformed it into something else entirely. The hull was scarred from 3 separate engagements. One engine was held together with improvised welds. The weapon systems overheated if fired for more than 30 seconds continuously. It was the perfect weapon for guerrilla warfare. Target approaching, her sensor officer reported. Kryn frigate. Looks like they're searching this sector. Jiwoo studied the enemy ship on her screen. It was alone, separated from its fleet. The Kryn had been forced to spread out to cover the vast distances of the Sol system. It was exactly what Admiral Subin had wanted. Distance? Jiwoo asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing. They haven't detected us yet. The asteroid is masking our signature. Jiwoo nodded. The Defiant hid in the shadow of a rock 5 kilometers across, its systems running cold. It was a tactic the Kryn never used because their doctrine did not allow for hiding. Warriors of the Kryn Empire did not ambush. They faced their enemies with honor. Humans had no such restrictions. Prepare mining charges, Jiwoo ordered. Arm them for magnetic adhesion. When that frigate gets close enough, we're going to attach a present to its hull. The charges had been taken from civilian mining operations in the asteroid belt. They were designed to crack rocks, not warships. But Taehyun had modified them, adding simple guidance systems and magnetic clamps. The Kryn shields protected against energy weapons and projectiles. They were not designed to stop something that simply attached itself to the outside of the ship. The frigate passed within 10,000 kilometers. Its sensors swept the area, but the asteroid's mass created a blind spot. The Defiant remained invisible. Launch, Jiwoo whispered. 6 mining charges rocketed out from the corvette's cargo bay. They looked like simple cylinders, unpowered and drifting. The Kryn sensors dismissed them as debris. By the time the charges activated their magnetic clamps and attached themselves to the frigate's hull, it was too late. The Defiant's engines roared to life. The small ship accelerated away at maximum speed. Detonate, Jiwoo ordered. The mining charges exploded simultaneously. They could not penetrate the Kryn armor, but they did not need to. The explosions created electromagnetic pulses that scrambled the frigate's external sensor arrays. Blind and confused, the Kryn ship tried to pursue, but the Defiant vanished into the asteroid belt before they could lock weapons. Across the system, similar attacks were happening. Human ships struck from unexpected directions, used improvised weapons, and retreated before the enemy could respond. The Kryn were losing vessels to damage faster than their repair teams could work. Lord Commander Vexthor watched his tactical display with growing fury. In 4 days, he had lost 3 ships completely destroyed and 7 more damaged badly enough to require withdrawal from combat. The humans had lost 5 ships, but the remaining 3 continued to fight with desperate determination. Worse, his fleet's coordination was breaking down. Captains were second-guessing orders. Ships were hesitating before engaging, afraid of traps. The perfect discipline of the Kryn military was cracking under the stress of fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Lord Commander, his communications officer said carefully, message from the Council. They're asking for a progress report. Tell them we are pacifying the region, Vexthor growled. Sir, they've been monitoring the battle. They know, tell them what I said. Vexthor slammed his fist on the armrest. The officer flinched and sent the message. Vexthor knew what the Council was thinking. The mighty Kryn Empire, brought to a standstill by a handful of primitive ships. It was humiliating. If he did not achieve victory soon, he would be recalled in disgrace. New orders, Vexthor said. All ships converge on Earth. We will ignore the scattered vessels and take the planet directly. Once we control Earth, the remaining ships will have nowhere to resupply. They will either surrender or run out of resources. It was a sound strategy. It was also what Admiral Subin had been waiting for. On Luna, Subin watched the Kryn fleet begin to regroup. They were moving toward Earth in a concentrated formation again. 12 warships moving as one unstoppable force. They're leaving the outer system undefended, Captain Daesung observed from his position on the Indomitable. His ship had been damaged in an engagement near Saturn, but had managed to make it back for repairs. They think we can't stop them, Subin said. They're probably right. 12 Kryn warships against our 3 remaining combat vessels. The math is not in our favor. Then we change the math, Daesung said. Jiwoo's corvette is still operational. My ship can fight. That's two. Who else can we field? Subin checked her roster. The transport horizon has been retrofitted with weapons. It's not much, but it can shoot and... She paused. We have the civilian defense volunteers. 30 mining ships. They're not military vessels, but they have pilots who know the system better than anyone. Daesung smiled grimly. Then we use everything we have. 6 hours later, the Kryn fleet approached Earth. Vexthor expected to find a defended planet, perhaps a last desperate stand by the remaining human warships. Instead, he found chaos. Hundreds of small vessels filled the space around Earth. Mining ships, transports, maintenance craft, even personal shuttles. They swarmed around the Kryn fleet like insects, firing whatever weapons they had mounted. Most of the weapons were civilian-grade and could not penetrate Kryn shields. That was not the point. The point was to create confusion. What is this? Vexthor demanded. Are they using civilians as shields? No, sir, his tactical officer reported. Those ships are actively attacking us. They're volunteers. Among the swarm, 3 real warships moved with purpose. The Indomitable, repaired but still scarred, led the attack. Jiwoo's Defiant darted between the civilian vessels, using them as cover. The transport horizon, ungainly but determined, fired missiles at the Kryn formation. Destroy them, Vexthor ordered. All of them. The Kryn fleet opened fire. Particle beams lanced through space, destroying civilian ships in single shots. The volunteers knew the risks. They had accepted them. Every second they bought was a second Earth's population could evacuate to underground shelters. But the civilians were not just bait. They were distraction. While the Kryn fleet was focused on the swarm, the Indomitable and Defiant coordinated a strike on the flagship. They fired everything they had at the massive vessel's communication arrays. The shots connected. The flagship's external antennas exploded in cascades of debris. Vexthor's ship could still fight, but it could no longer coordinate the fleet's actions through the advanced network that linked all Kryn vessels. All ships, Vexthor shouted into his local communicator. Concentrate fire on the Indomitable. Destroy it now. But without the network, his orders were delayed. Ships hesitated, unsure if they should break formation. Some moved to engage. Others waited for confirmation. The perfect coordination that made the Kryn fleet so deadly dissolved into confusion. Daesung saw the enemy formation collapse and knew this was the moment. All ships, focus on the damaged cruiser at position Delta 4. Civilian volunteers clear the firing line. Military vessels full assault. The 3 human warships and 30 volunteers all turned toward a single Kryn cruiser that had taken damage earlier in the battle. The concentrated firepower overwhelmed its shields. Railgun slugs and missiles slammed into the cruiser's hull. It tried to retreat but collided with another Kryn ship in the confusion. Both vessels took damage. One lost engine power and began to drift. Sir, Daesung's tactical officer said urgently. The flagship is launching fighters. Multiple small craft inbound. Daesung had been waiting for this. The Kryn rarely used fighters, preferring the power of capital ships. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Civilian ships, you have new targets, Daesung transmitted. Show those fighters what crazy looks like. The mining ships and transports were slow and poorly armed compared to military fighters. But there were 30 of them, and they were piloted by people who had spent years navigating asteroid fields and dodging debris. When the Kryn fighters came in for attack runs, they found themselves facing opponents who did not dodge in predictable patterns, did not retreat when fired upon, and occasionally just rammed enemy craft if they got close enough. It was inefficient. It was wasteful. It was insane. It worked. The fighter attack fell apart. The Kryn fleet, without centralized coordination and now harassed by suicidal mining ships, began to pull back. Vexthor screamed orders that arrived seconds too late to make a difference. All ships pursuit, Admiral Subin transmitted from Luna. Don't let them regroup. For the next 3 hours, the battle raged across Earth's orbit. The Kryn were still more powerful, still better armed, still more advanced in every technical measure. But they were fighting alone, each captain making their own decisions, while the humans fought as a unified swarm of organized chaos. When the sun rose over Luna's command center, the Kryn fleet was retreating. 3 more of their ships were destroyed. 5 others were severely damaged. The proving grounds looked empty. Just a vast sphere of space marked by boundary beacons, far enough from any station that weapons fire would not endanger anyone except the combatants. 300 vessels from various council races floated at a safe distance, their sensors trained on the battlefield. Everyone wanted to watch the primitives get humiliated. Captain Daesung sat in the command chair of the Indomitable, his hands steady on the armrests despite the sweat on his palms. Around him, his bridge crew worked in focused silence. Jiwoo monitored tactical displays, her fingers dancing across the controls. Taehyun's voice crackled over the intercom from engineering, running through final system checks. "All stations report ready, Captain," Jiwoo said. "Weapons at full charge. Shields at maximum. Hull integrity at, well, as good as it's going to get." Daesung allowed himself a small smile. The past 3 days had been a nightmare of preparation. They had stripped non-essential systems to boost power to weapons and shields. They had run simulation after simulation, trying to predict Kryn tactics. They had drilled until the crew could execute emergency maneuvers in their sleep, but none of it felt like enough. The Kryn destroyer Bloodfang entered the proving grounds from the opposite side. Even at a distance of 100 kilometers, it was intimidating. The ship was nearly twice the size of the Indomitable, its hull smooth and dark, weapons ports glowing with ready energy. It moved with perfect precision, every maneuver calculated and efficient. "They're beautiful," Jiwoo whispered. "I mean, they're going to try to kill us, but their ship is beautiful." "Beauty doesn't win fights," Daesung said. "Taehyun status." "Engines are running hot but stable," the engineer reported. "I've bypassed about 15 safety protocols, so if we push too hard, we might explode. But if we don't push hard, we'll definitely explode from their weapons, so 6 of one, half dozen of the other." "Comforting," Daesung muttered. Bora's voice came from Medical Bay. "All emergency trauma stations are ready. I've prepared for, well, everything I can think of. Try not to let the ship get cut in half, Captain. That's very difficult to treat." "I'll keep that in mind." The communication system chimed. A holographic projection appeared in front of Daesung, showing Vexthor in the commander's chair of the Bloodfang. The Kryn warrior looked relaxed, almost bored. "Human Captain," Vexthor said. "The rules have been transmitted to both vessels. The engagement begins when the boundary beacons turn red. It ends when one ship is disabled, destroyed, or retreats beyond the boundary. Do you understand?" "We understand," Daesung replied. "Good. I will try to keep you alive long enough to learn humility. Your ship will make an excellent trophy. I plan to mount a piece of your hull in my command center." Daesung leaned forward slightly. "Lord Commander, I have a question." "Speak. When we win, can I have a piece of your ship? I'm thinking a nice chunk of your engine housing. It would look good in our mess hall." Vexthor's expression darkened. "When this is over, human, you will regret your arrogance." The hologram cut off. Jiwoo glanced at the captain. Was antagonizing him part of the plan? "Yes," Daesung said. "Angry enemies make mistakes. Disciplined ones don't." The boundary beacons turned red. The Bloodfang accelerated instantly, its engines flaring blue. The destroyer closed the distance at a speed that made Jiwoo swear under her breath. Targeting computers screamed warnings as the Kryn ship locked weapons. "Evasive," Daesung snapped. The Indomitable lurched sideways, not in a smooth, calculated arc, but in a jerky, uneven dodge. Particle beams lanced through the space where they had been seconds before. The Bloodfang fired again, and again the Indomitable dodged, its movements erratic and unpredictable. "They're compensating," Jiwoo said, studying the tactical display. "Their computer is learning our pattern. Next shot will probably hit." "Then don't have a pattern," Daesung said. "Manual control. Helm, I want random course changes. Every 5 seconds, pick a new direction. Don't think about it, just do it." The helmsman, a young officer named Sungmin, nodded and gripped the controls. The Indomitable began moving like a drunk person walking on ice, swerving and jerking in ways no sane pilot would choose. It was deeply inefficient. It wasted fuel. It strained the engines. It was also impossible for the Bloodfang's targeting computer to predict. Vexthor's frustrated voice came over the open channel. "Stop running and fight." "Jiwoo, do we have a shot?" Daesung asked. "Negative, sir. Their shields are too strong and we can't get a clean angle while we're dodging." "Then stop dodging." Sungmin straight at them. Full speed. The bridge went quiet. Sungmin hesitated. "Sir?" "Full speed at the enemy ship." "Do it now." The Indomitable surged forward. The Bloodfang seemed surprised by the sudden charge and held its fire for a moment, probably expecting a trick. By the time Vexthor ordered weapons hot, The range had closed to 30 kilometers. 25 kilometers, Jiwoo called out. 20, 15. The Bloodfang fired everything. Particle beams and plasma bolts tore through space. The Indomitable's shields lit up like a firework display, absorbing hit after hit. Warning klaxons blared across every deck, shields at 60%. Jiwoo shouted, 50! Captain, we can't take much more. 10 kilometers, Daesung said calmly. Taehyun, prepare the coolant dump. Ready, sir? 5 kilometers now. The Indomitable vented its entire coolant system directly forward, releasing thousands of liters of super-chilled liquid into space. The cloud expanded instantly, freezing into crystals that scattered the Bloodfang's sensor beams. They're blind, Jiwoo said. 3 seconds, maybe 4. All weapons, same target, fire. The Indomitable's missiles, railguns, and laser batteries all fired at once, converging on a single point on the Bloodfang's shields. The concentrated firepower at point-blank range slammed into the same spot repeatedly. The Kryn shields held. They were designed to withstand sustained fire from multiple ships, but they had never been designed for someone to fire everything they had at the exact same point while blind from coolant crystals. The shields flickered, weakened, collapsed. In a 5-meter section of the hull, one railgun slug punched through the gap and hit the Bloodfang's armor. The damage was minor, barely a dent, but it was damage. The mighty Kryn destroyer had been hurt by the Rustbucket. Break off, Daesung ordered. Get us out of their range. The Indomitable spun away, its engines screaming. The Bloodfang pursued but sluggishly. Their shields were regenerating, but it took time. Status, Daesung demanded. Shields down to 15%, Jiwoo reported. Multiple hull breaches on decks 4 and 5. Weapons are overheated. We can fire again in 90 seconds. Coolant? Daesung asked. Gone, Taehyun said. That was our entire supply. The engines are running dangerously hot. I'm trying to manage it, but we can't do that trick again. We don't need to, Daesung said. We proved we can hurt them. Now we just need to survive long enough to do it again. The Bloodfang had recovered. It came at them again faster, this time angry. Vexthor was done playing. For the next 10 minutes, the Indomitable ran. It used every trick Daesung could think of. They fired missiles not at the enemy but at space debris to create obstacles. They shut down all systems for 3 seconds to appear dead, then roared back to life when the Bloodfang came close. They even intentionally vented atmosphere from one section to create thrust in an unexpected direction. Weapons ready, Jiwoo finally announced. Find me a shot, Daesung said. 1 shot. Make it count. Jiwoo studied her screens. The Bloodfang was being more careful now, keeping distance, firing from range. Then she saw it. Captain, their shield generators are on the port side. I can see the energy signature. If we could hit them there. They won't let us get an angle, Daesung said, unless they think we're already beaten. Taehyun, can you make the engines look like they're failing? I can make the engines actually fail if that helps. Do it. Make it look like we're dead in space. The Indomitable went dark. Emergency lights flickered on the bridge. The ship drifted, lifeless. The Bloodfang approached cautiously. Vexthor's voice came over the communication system. Surrender now, humans, and I will allow you to evacuate before I destroy your ship. Wait, Daesung whispered. Let them get closer. 1 kilometer, Jiwoo breathed. 800 meters. Wait, 500 meters. Captain, this is our chance. Now! Everything we have. The Indomitable came alive. All weapons fired at the Bloodfang's shield generators. The surprise was complete. The Kryn shields, damaged from the earlier hit, couldn't withstand the concentrated assault. They failed. For 3 seconds, the mighty Bloodfang was exposed. 3 seconds was enough. The Indomitable's weapons tore into the destroyer's hull. Explosions blossomed along the port side. The Bloodfang lurched, atmosphere venting from multiple breaches. Then it retreated, limping toward the boundary at maximum speed. The Indomitable did not pursue. It couldn't. Half its systems were offline, shields were gone, and the engines were on the verge of meltdown. But the Bloodfang crossed the boundary first. The watching fleet erupted in confusion and disbelief. The primitive humans had won. Daesung slumped in his chair, suddenly exhausted. Around him his crew began to cheer, but he held up a hand. Get us back to the station, he said quietly, and someone tell Taehyun he's getting a medal. The view from the observation deck of Nexus Prime Station was supposed to be inspiring. Thousands of ships from hundreds of worlds floated in the darkness like jewels. Among them, the ESS Indomitable looked like a rusty nail in a box of diamonds. Captain Dae-sung stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at his ship through the transparent aluminum window. He could see every weld mark on the hull, every mismatched panel where the engineers had grafted mining equipment onto military hardware. The ship was ugly. He knew it, his crew knew it. And now, the entire Galactic Council knew it too. "They're laughing at us," said Ambassador Hyojin quietly. She stood beside him, her formal diplomatic robes feeling heavy and out of place. "I can hear them even through the translation devices." Dae-sung nodded slowly. The council chamber behind them buzzed with alien voices, chittering and humming and speaking in frequencies humans could barely hear. But the translator earpieces rendered it all in clear Korean and the meaning was unmistakable. "Humanity was a joke. Let them laugh," Dae-sung said. "We didn't come here to impress them. We came here to survive." The doors to the council chamber opened with a soft hiss. A mechanical voice announced their return. Hyojin straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked back into the room. Dae-sung followed 2 steps behind as protocol demanded. The Galactic Council met in a circular chamber large enough to hold a football stadium. Representatives from 200 species sat in hovering seats arranged in concentric rings. At the center, a holographic display showed star maps, trade routes, and territorial boundaries. Earth was a tiny blue dot on the edge of known space. The Valorian speaker gestured with one elegant 6-fingered hand. Her skin shimmered like oil on water, colors shifting as she spoke. "We have reviewed your petition, Ambassador Hyojin of Earth. Your species has achieved faster-than-light travel and established 3 colony worlds. These are adequate accomplishments for such a young race." Hyojin bowed respectfully. "We thank the Council for their consideration. However," the Valorian continued, and Dae-sung felt his stomach tighten, "there are concerns. Your technology is primitive. Your ships are improvised. You have no standing military tradition recognized by Council standards. Several members question whether humanity is ready for even client race status." A crystalline being that looked like living glass chimed in, its voice like wind through hollow tubes. "Your vessel is a patchwork. We can see where you have welded civilian components to military frames. This suggests either poverty or incompetence. Or both," added another voice, and laughter rippled through the chamber. Dae-sung's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. This was Hyojin's arena, not his. "We built what we could with what we had," Hyojin said calmly. "Humanity has been in space for only 50 years. We are young, yes, but we are determined. We are here to learn, to trade, and to prove ourselves worthy." "Prove yourselves?" The new voice came from the Kryn section of the chamber. Lord Commander Vexthor rose from his seat, his massive frame covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. His species looked almost humanoid, but larger, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like embers. "You cannot prove what does not exist." The chamber fell silent. The Kryn were not a race to be interrupted. Vexthor descended from his platform and walked to the center of the chamber. His boots rang against the metal floor with each step. He stopped in front of the holographic display and gestured at Earth's position on the map. "This council has standards," Vexthor said. "For 10,000 years we have maintained order in this galaxy. We have fought wars, established peace, and created prosperity. We do not grant membership to every species that manages to stumble into space." He turned to face Hyojin directly. "Your ship is an insult to every military tradition represented here. It is a flying garbage heap held together with hope and desperation. If this is the best Earth can produce, then Earth has no place among civilized worlds." Dae-sung took a half step forward, but Hyojin raised her hand slightly. "A warning." "Stay back, Lord Commander," Hyojin said carefully. "We do not claim to match your military might. We seek only the opportunity to prove ourselves as allies and partners." "Then prove it," Vexthor said. He smiled, showing teeth designed for tearing meat. "I propose a test. A simple military exercise. Your ship against one of ours. If you survive one engagement, we will grant you probationary status. If you fail," he paused, "then Earth will surrender administrative rights to all 3 colony worlds for the next century." "They will become Kryn protectorates," the chamber erupted. Some voices shouted approval. Others raised objections. The Valorian speaker tried to restore order, but the damage was done. The challenge had been issued publicly, and refusing it would be seen as cowardice. Hee-jin turned to look at Dae-sung. Her face was calm, but her eyes asked the question, "Can we win?" Dae-sung thought about his ship. He thought about his crew, Tactical Officer Ji-woo, who could calculate firing solutions faster than the computer, Engineer Tae-hyun, who had kept the Indomitable running through 3 near disasters on the journey here, Medical Officer Bora, who somehow kept morale up even when everything was falling apart. He thought about the Kryn destroyer he had seen in the docking bay, sleek, modern, armed, with weapons that could vaporize the Indomitable in seconds. Then he thought about what would happen if they refused. Earth would be humiliated. The colonies would be lost. Humanity would be marked as cowards, and no one would ever take them seriously again. Dae-sung stepped forward and bowed to Vexthor. "We accept your challenge, Lord Commander." The Kryn warrior's smile widened. "Excellent. The engagement will take place in the proving grounds in 3 days. The rules are simple. Both ships enter the designated zone. Both ships fight until one is disabled or retreats. No interference. No assistance. Just your Rustbucket against our destroyer." "Agreed," Dae-sung said. Vexthor laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "I almost feel guilty. But someone must teach you primitives your place in the galaxy. Better to learn it now than die learning it later." The council session ended shortly after. As Dae-sung and Hee-jin left the chamber, they said nothing to each other. There was nothing to say. In 3 days, the Indomitable would face a warship designed by a civilization that had been building such vessels for millennia. On the shuttle back to their ship, Hee-jin finally spoke. "Can we win?" Dae-sung looked out the window at the Indomitable. "Ugly, patched, outdated. A Rustbucket, I don't know," he admitted. "But we're going to try." When they docked, the crew was waiting. They had watched the council session on the ship's monitors. They knew what was coming. Ji-woo spoke first. "Captain, we'll need to run combat simulations. Study their tactics. Find a weakness." Tae-hyun shook his head. "Forget weaknesses. We need to reinforce the hull plating, reroute power to weapons, and pray the engines don't explode when we push them." Bora was the only one smiling. "We've survived worse odds. Remember the asteroid field near Proxima? That was navigation," Ji-woo said. "This is combat against a superior enemy." "Then we don't fight fair," Dae-sung said. Everyone turned to look at him. "The Kryn expect us to fight like them. Professional, organized, by the book. But we don't have their book. We're going to fight like humans." "What does that mean?" Tae-hyun asked. Dae-sung smiled for the first time since entering the council chamber. "It means we're going to be unpredictable, annoying, and too stubborn to die. Now get to work. We have 3 days to turn this Rustbucket into something that can survive." The crew scattered to their stations. Dae-sung remained on the bridge staring at the main view screen. In 3 days, the galaxy would watch Earth's first warship fight for humanity's future. He intended to give them a show they would never forget. 2 weeks after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 200 species filled the Great Chamber, but this time the atmosphere was different. No one was laughing. No one dismissed the humans as primitive. Ambassador Hee-jin stood in the center of the chamber, but she did not bow. Captain Dae-sung stood beside her in his uniform, still bearing the marks of battle. His arm was in a medical brace. His face showed the exhaustion of someone who had not slept properly in weeks. But his eyes were steady. The Valorian speaker gestured for silence. The chamber grew quiet. "Ambassador Hee-jin," the Valorian said carefully, "we have reviewed the events in your home system. The Council acknowledges that the situation evolved in unexpected ways." "Unexpected," Hee-jin repeated. Her voice was calm but cold. "Is that what you call sending 20 warships to conquer a world that had done nothing wrong? Lord Commander Vexthor declared war on Earth because we hurt his pride, and the Council allowed it." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Valorian speaker's colors flickered through shades that indicated distress. "The Council believed the Kryn action was a legitimate security measure," she said. "Your victory against the Bloodfang was concerning to some members. The Kryn argued that an unpredictable new race needed guidance." "You mean control," Dae-sung said. All eyes turned to him. "Let's be honest. The Kryn were humiliated, and the Council let them start a war to restore their reputation. How many of my people died for their pride? How many volunteers gave their lives defending their home? The crystalline Nether representative chimed softly. Captain, we understand your anger, but the Kryn Empire is one of the founding members of this council. They have maintained order for 10,000 years. Their military traditions? Their traditions almost got them destroyed, Daesung interrupted. We're not here to apologize for surviving. We're here to demand justice. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates shouted support. Others called for order. A few demanded that the humans be punished for their disrespect. Through it all, Heejin and Daesung stood silent, waiting. Finally, the Valorian speaker called for quiet. What do you want, Ambassador? Hyojin stepped forward. Full membership in the Galactic Council. Immediate and unconditional. Protection for all human colony worlds, and reparations from the Kryn Empire for the unprovoked attack on Earth. Impossible, someone shouted. You cannot demand what we already defeated your demands, Heejin said flatly. 20 Kryn warships, the pride of their fleet. They came to conquer Earth and we sent them running. Now you'll negotiate with us as equals, or you'll negotiate with us as enemies. Choose. A door at the far end of the chamber opened. Lord Commander Vexthor entered, flanked by Kryn guards. He was no longer wearing his armor. His face was marked with ritual scars that indicated shame. The mighty warrior looked diminished, defeated. He walked to the center of the chamber and stopped in front of Heijin and Daesung. For a long moment he simply stared at them. Then he spoke, his voice rough. I came here to warn the council, Vexthor said. These humans are dangerous. They do not follow the old rules. They do not fight with honor. They are chaos incarnate, and they will destroy everything we have built. Are you finished? Daesung asked. Vexthor's face twisted with rage. You should not have won. Your ships are inferior. Your technology is primitive. Your tactics are, he struggled for words, insane. By every measure, we should have crushed you. But you didn't, Daesung said simply, because you made the same mistake everyone here made. You thought being advanced meant being superior. You thought following the old ways guaranteed victory. You forgot that sometimes the best strategy is to throw away the strategy. You fight like animals, Vexthor spat. We fight to win, Daesung corrected, and we fight to protect our home. If that makes us dangerous, then yes, we're dangerous. But we didn't start this fight. You did. Vexthor fell silent. He looked around the chamber, seeing the faces of the other delegates. Some looked at him with pity, others with contempt. His failure had cost the Kryn Empire more than ships. It had cost them their reputation. The Kryn Empire will pay reparations, Vexthor said quietly. We will acknowledge Earth's sovereignty. And he paused, the words clearly painful. I will resign my command. I have brought shame to my people. He turned and walked out of the chamber. No one stopped him. The Valorian speaker looked at Hyojin. The council will vote on your petition, but I believe I can predict the outcome. You have demonstrated that humanity deserves a voice in galactic affairs. She paused. Though I wonder if you understand what you've done. You've upset the order that has maintained peace for millennia. Peace? Heejin said. Or stagnation. The old order allowed the strong to bully the weak. It rewarded tradition over innovation. Maybe it's time for a new order. That is what we fear, the Valorian said softly. The vote was called. It was not unanimous. Several species voted against human membership, worried about the chaos humanity represented, but enough voted in favor. Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and protections that entailed. When the vote was announced, Hyojin bowed respectfully. Thank you, Council. Earth will work to be a worthy member, but we will do it our way. 6 months later, Captain Daesung stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, watching as repair crews completed the final work on the ship. The scars from battle could have been erased, the hull plating replaced with new material. But Daesung had refused. Engineer Tae-hyun stood beside him, studying their ship with critical eyes. She's still ugly, he observed. She's beautiful, Daesung corrected. Every scar tells a story. Every patch shows we survived something that should have killed us. The council offered to give us new ships, Tae-hyun said. Modern designs. Advanced weapons. We could have a fleet that actually looks professional. We'll take the weapons, Daesung said, but we'll install them our way. The Indomitable stays as she is. Let everyone who sees her remember what a Rustbucket can do when it's crewed by people who refuse to quit. Medical Officer Bora entered the observation deck, carrying 3 cups of coffee. She handed them out and stood with the others looking at their ship. I heard from Jiwoo, Bora said. She's been assigned to the new defense station near the Mars colony. They're promoting her to captain. She earned it, Daesung said. She saved Earth twice during that battle. We all saved Earth, Bora corrected. Even the volunteers in their mining ships, especially them. They fell silent, remembering the civilians who had volunteered to fight. 15 had died, but their sacrifice had bought the time needed for Earth's professional military to win. Do you think they'll come back? Taehyun asked. The Kryn? Eventually, Daesung said. Or someone else will. The galaxy isn't safe just because we won one battle, but next time we'll be ready. We're learning, building, adapting. That's what humans do best. And we have allies now, Bora added. The Valorians sent technical data on shield systems. The Nether offered cultural exchange programs. Even some of the Kryn's old allies are opening diplomatic channels with Earth. Because they're afraid of us, Taehyun said. Good, Daesung replied. Fear means respect. They'll think twice before threatening us again. An alert chimed. Admiral Subin's face appeared on the communication screen. Captain Daesung, report to Fleet Command. We have a new situation. Daesung straightened. What kind of situation, Admiral? The Council received a distress signal from a colony on the frontier. Pirates. They're asking if Earth can send assistance. Subin smiled slightly. Apparently we have a reputation now. People think we can handle problems that others can't. Can we? Daesung asked. I don't know, Subin admitted, but we're going to try. Get your crew ready. The Indomitable leaves in 12 hours. The transmission ended. Daesung looked at Taehyun and Bora. Both were already heading for the door, ready to prepare the ship. Same old Rustbucket, Taehyun called back. Different day. Daesung remained on the observation deck for a moment longer, looking at Earth through the viewport. The blue planet hung peaceful in the darkness, unaware of how close it had come to conquest. But it was safe now, protected by a fleet of ugly, patched, improvised ships that had proven one essential truth. Humans did not need to be perfect. They just needed to be human, stubborn, creative, unpredictable, and absolutely refusing to quit no matter how bad the odds. That had been enough to defeat the Kryn Empire. It would be enough for whatever came next. Daesung turned and walked toward the bridge. The Indomitable had work to do. The galaxy was learning to respect Earth, but respect was not something given freely. It had to be earned again and again, through action. The Rustbucket and her crew were ready. In the council chambers on Nexus Prime Station, the Valorian speaker stood alone, watching a recording of the Battle of Sol. She played it again and again, studying the human tactics, the chaos, the improvisation, the utter disregard for traditional military doctrine. What have we allowed into the council? She whispered to herself. But deep down she knew the answer. Humanity had not asked permission to become important. They had forced the galaxy to acknowledge them through sheer determination. And now they were here to stay,